Side Part. It's like a book club with your best friend, but make it a podcast. Welcome back, crawlers, to another episode of Side Part. I'm Nikki, your bookish bestie, and today I'm giving you my final thoughts on the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook by Matt Dinniman. It is the third book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, and dare I say, so far it might be my favorite book in this series. But remember, I have not read ahead. I have not even started book 4 intentionally because I wanted to feel like you are reading along with me. All of my thoughts, theories, reactions are just based on books 1, 2, and this book, number 3. Friendly reminder, there will be spoilers for the entire book. I just want to make that very, very clear before you listen to this episode. Also, there are some very adult scenes and some very dark humor. I will do my best to keep this episode PG-13, but there will be things that are not so PG-13, but I'll give you a heads up when we get to that point. Before I dive into my final thoughts on this book, I want to talk about something. I feel like genre-bending books, like Dungeon Crawler Carl in particular, are just having a moment right now. I feel like readers are just craving chaos rather than predictability. At its core, I think readers just want to feel surprised again. They don't want to know what to expect book to book, chapter to chapter, and I think Dungeon Crawler Carl in particular doesn't really fit neatly into any boxes. And I think that's what makes it so appealing to people who are listening or reading for the first time. And after you listen or read Dungeon Crawler Carl, I feel like there's this desperate urge, unlike anything I've ever read before, but there's this desperate urge to talk to people about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I made a Bookstagram and I entered the bookish space because I love yapping about books. That's why this podcast exists. But I've never felt quite like I did with Dungeon Crawler Carl, the need to talk to people about like what the heck just happened? Like, what was that? What is going on? And I think that need to talk to people drives community. It's like that chaos wrapped in like these really deep layered themes and topics. That's what drives community. That's what brings people together. I'm on Threads probably more than I should be, but I'll see like a pithy comment with people either poking fun at the series or trying to discredit it in some way. And let me just say this. If you love Dungeon Crawler Carl, like, you really don't care. Like, you just don't care. Like, at least I can speak for myself. I genuinely don't care if you don't like this series, but a lot of times the comments that they're trying to use as like evidence as to why this series isn't good or why it's not good literature are just so unfounded, because what it boils down to is preference. And I think we're seeing this resurgence of people who just genuinely prefer something different and new and refreshing and, quite frankly, chaotic. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And this is starting to bridge into a different territory, but I think we've kind of lost the plot a little bit when it comes to literature and recognizing that there's all kinds of kinds, right? For different kinds of people. And we start to trip ourselves up a bit when we start thinking, oh my gosh, if it's not for me, then it must just not be good. And you couldn't be further from the truth if you think that. But I think if you actually read these books, you know they're just packed with much more than just like surface level characters, right? There's social commentary that makes you evaluate your own thoughts and beliefs, which I was not ready for that, let me tell you. And truly, I think it's satire in one of its purest forms. But you realize there's just layers and layers and layers beneath the beneath the chaos. And these characters become a part of you. And I will say I am guilty of reading a book and not remembering every character's name once I finish it. I will confidently say I don't think I will forget a single character in this series' names, and they are wild names, and they're a lot of names, but even if they're just an NPC that sticks around for a little bit, I will never forget Firebrandy or Tisquick. I mean, just their stories are just so rich. It's so dark, and nonetheless, these characters will become a part of you. And sure, you may hear random goat screams or Fergalicious rattling around in your brain, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you will also hear, "You will not break me," in those really, really tough times when the world feels extra, extra heavy. So yeah, on the outside, this series seems insanely chaotic and outlandish, But after finishing book 3, I can confidently say that these books are just so much more. What is your favorite thing about this series? Let me know down in the comments. So without further ado, let's dive into my final thoughts on the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook by Matt Dinniman. Reminder, we're doing the entire book, but let's start from, I think it's chapter 19, because that's where I kind of left off with my last episode. So first up, Frank's back. Frank's back. I remember, in the first book, I was like, Frank is going to make a comeback. I didn't think it was going to be so depressing. I mean, we learned that obviously you had this hunch that Maestro wasn't giving you the full picture about what happened with his daughter's death. But my goodness, I didn't think it was going to be because of an enchanted ring and that she couldn't heal. And then her parents were forced to end her suffering, essentially. And my goodness, Frank is just going on this, drunk rant, and he's so depressed, and we realize Maggie's left him, ditched him, he has no one, and he's alone, which honestly, he seems like a not so great of a human, so I don't really feel bad for him in that sense, that he's alone. I'm like, you're not my favorite person, but he said something, and I highlighted it, and it just really stood out to me. He has this awareness moment that sometimes parents can cast a shadow so thick that you drown in it. And my goodness, I'm wondering if there's some parallel there with Carl. And I could be reaching, but I think we see time and time again that, Carl has this host of just issues with his own parents. And he's having this moment where he's connecting with Frank kind of unexpectedly. And Frank gives him this ring, and it, raises all of his stats, but there's a catch, right? That obviously Mordecai was not too happy about when he finally came back after being kicked away for, I forgot how many days it was. Don't quote me. This is not a factual retelling of these chapters. This is just my reactions. But obviously, Carl reluctantly takes off the ring. He's like, I'm not going to use the scary power that's attached to it. I'm just here for the buffs. But nonetheless, that reunion with Frank was really, really sad. Moving on. We need to talk about Katya. Consider this my formal apology to Katya. I feel really bad. I actually really, really like her now. I really like her. I think she's coming out of her shell. As Odessa would say, she's more zippy now. But I feel bad for thinking she was so incredibly sus. I think I confused her loyalty for her being inauthentic. So we know that obviously she was warring with where her loyalty lied. Was it with Hekla? Was it with this new party she kind of formed with Carl and Donut? And I think she is turning into a formidable character and a fighter. And she is just, honestly, her doppelganger race is so cool. I think the possibilities are honestly endless with this race. But what happened with Hekla, and I think we'll dive into Hekla in a little bit. I just think we cannot talk about Katya's character arc without talking about Hekla, because I think Hekla was the catalyst that really allowed Katya to just morph into this super formidable character. So midway through the book, we meet up with Hekla and I think it's Brynhild's daughters, and they're all standing in Carl's personal space. And did anyone else get the absolute, I hate using this phrase, but the ick when they're all standing there and I'm like, ew, get out. You're not part of this crew. And I don't know, from the very beginning, I just did not get good vibes from Hekla. I just didn't. I don't like her. I don't like her vibes, the way she feels. I just do not like her. I did love that Carl was constantly making comments toward her. Obviously, they were very passive aggressive, but kind of letting her know, I see you for what you are, but I'm going to pretend like this is all fun and I'm just poking jabs. But we kind of see Carl just unravel a little bit when they hatch this whole plan to rescue all these crawlers. And obviously Hekla is just appealing to Carl's savior complex. And knowing that she's a therapist, she knew exactly what she was doing. And then we realize there was this whole plan with Eva and Hekla to essentially anger Carl enough, let Katya die, and obviously Hekla shot her with that invisible arrow, and Donut saw it. Nonetheless, we realize Hecla is a horrible person and had no problems, getting rid of Katya to gain Donut because the manager benefit is just so OP. With that entire thing, I think my favorite part was when, Donut through chat's like, oh my God, Hecla, she just shot Katya. I saw Carl. And Carl's like, Donut, be cool. Like, shh, it doesn't have to turn into a fight. We don't need this to turn into something. Oh my gosh, Donut's like, you try to kill Katya, you effing B. And then she like shoots a magic missile at her. And I wasn't even listening to this part. Actually, probably would have been hilarious if I was. But I am glad that in the end, though, it wasn't Donut's missiles that took Hecla out. It was Katya with the rush ability that actually was meant for Eva, but actually took out Hecla. Like, I'm not one to root for the demise of characters, but I was really glad that Hecla was just out of the story. With this whole like Hecla situation though, so obviously we have Carl trying to play the savior. We have Katya just like mind broken, like how did this lady betray me? But we also see Donut's abandonment wound show up. Here, I think I have the exact quote. She said, to Hecla, I used to think you were awesome, Hecla. But you're just like all the rest. You pretend to be good, but you're not. It was a lie, all a lie. Why? Why can't we trust anyone? You told Katya you wanted her. You made her feel special and loved, and you just wanted to use her and trade her in. First of all, I don't think Hecla wanted to trade her in necessarily. She just viewed her as disposable. But I think this is bringing up, obviously, what Donut experienced with B. And like Donut isn't as naive as she portrays herself. She was very aware that B was going to trade her in for a new model. And I think we keep seeing these pieces of Donut just being far more aware and far less childlike than we've given her credit for. Ultimately, though, I am so stoked that Katya is officially a member of their party. She is here to stay for now. Obviously nothing can be happy. We're only in book 3 of like a very long series, so we'll see what happens with that. But we don't have to worry about Hecla anymore. And Brynhild's daughters are no more. But she is also a Desperado member, and I am so excited for that. I always felt so bad when she couldn't go into the club, so that was really, really exciting. But I am concerned about the whereabouts of Eva. I think she is going to become a thorn in their side. Somehow, I think she's going to end up showing up and just kind of doing something crazy. However, I thought the same thing about Frank, and then that wasn't the case, so I could be wrong. She could come back crawling, asking for them to help her, and Carl will. The possibilities are endless with this book. I think we have established that I cannot predict anything because these books are just chaos, and I love it. Kind of backing up a little bit, though, I think one of the things that I love the most is like these, we've talked about it before, but the politics and kind of like what's going on the outside. And in the middle of the book, they, went on this show. I can't remember the exact name, but essentially it was like a nature documentary, and Carl had to do some voiceovers and Donut had to do some voiceovers. And there, from a robot, they learn kind of just how cheaply this dungeon is being ran, and that it's basically always on the verge of collapse. They also have this moment where they're able to access their inventory because of whatever system they've put in place was just cheaper to have like these zones where they can access inventory. And so TLDR, this is just a very cheap dungeon, and I should actually say the Bloom are doing this on the cheap, and they're trying to do it as quick as possible, which we already knew. But Zev also references this when she won't take off her protective suit, because usually admin would be protected when they're entering the dungeon on like the lower levels. But we also learned that's not the case. So there's just all these little nuggets that get dropped. And that's, I think, why I love the show so much, is we really start knowing like more about this outer world, like this entire system that's going on outside of the dungeon. Also, speaking of Zev, where is she? I'm concerned. I do not like Lolita at all. She's a weird dynamic with Odette, which we saw in the epilogue, but she's also like the definition of like a helicopter mom. And she won't let Carl and Donut out of her sight, and low-key her vibes are terrible. But we know that like Zev might be losing control as their like PR person, because Katya had a different one when she was part of like Hecla's crew. So we know that even if Zev comes back. Loita's probably still going to be involved in some way because she's part of the Bloom, which is a portion of the Kuatin that's kind of controlling the dungeon. And we know Zev is not part of that political party. But we also learn about another political party throughout all of this with the dungeon, and it's called the Plenty. And I'm sorry, the entire government, please correct me in the comments, but it gets a little bit confusing to me, but I believe the Plenty are formed of the same monsters or creatures that the Krakarin are in the dungeon, but they're being portrayed in a very vile way because the Bloom is trying to push their political narrative. So I actually don't know. Wait, now I need to backtrack. I also remember them saying they were similar to the Valte. So actually, I'm not even sure who the Plenty are. I think I'm starting to get really confused. I think they might be also one of those, I think they might also be similar to the Valte. And are the Valte Corporation the Plenty? I think it's actually intentional that it's confusing. So I'm just going to leave it alone. But we have two political parties that we know of, the Plenty and the Bloom. We also need to talk about my pal Mordecai. He comes back towards the end of the book, and all is right in the world. I feel like he just adds this important piece to the puzzle, and I feel like Carl's a bit lost without him. He still makes insane choices even with Mordecai, but at least Mordecai can give him some help or context or a little bit of a heads up. But he does give us some important context, not only with the Iron Tangle, but also at the end with, summoning Gruul, the giant god, but we'll get to that. With the Iron Tangle, I fully just decided to become a passenger princess and just accept whatever Carl was telling me. And then slowly it kind of, I think, made sense. The noodle metaphor actually made sense to me. I don't know if I fully grasped the map, but I don't know if we're meant to. And I just have resigned myself to just accepting my limited understanding for what it is and knowing I might never fully understand it, but I don't think I'll ever be able to unpicture a big long penne noodle, and then Carl and Donut just peeking down and looking through the portal at Prepotente. Oh my gosh, I'm saying his name. Prepotente. Wait, look this up. Prepotente. I did say it right. Anyway, I'm just going to release what I don't understand about the Iron Tangle and just clear my brain for book 4, which will ultimately be filled with a bunch of other confusing things, but hopefully not as confusing as the Iron Tangle. I'm hoping the system is much more simplistic than what I just endured for the entirety of book 3. One thing I loved about Carl's character arc in this entire book is he just became so self-aware. Obviously, we knew he was kind of self-aware in the first and second book, but before the final scene, he is talking about the people around him. So I think it was Li Jun, Zhang, and Li Na. And he was just so aware of their demeanor and the way they viewed or interacted with him. I think in the first book, we really thought Carl was just kind of this simple guy and just didn't think too deeply about anything. But in this moment where he's looking at these 3 characters, he recognizes that Li Jun and Zhang were just too timid and were never going to actually confront him. And then Li Na would not suffer any fools, as he said. And if she opened her mouth, he knew that everybody around was going to listen. And he's just so in tune with where people stand, how they view him, how they interact with others. And what I don't think I quite realized was you have to be very socially adept to be able to navigate these things. And then, okay, I'm going to go on a whole trauma run here, but kids who experience intense amount of trauma often are very attuned to the slight dynamic changes within groups or between people, with not only with them, but with others. And they're very attuned at kind of picking up on the slightest shifts. And so I think this is also indicative of Carl's trauma and what he endured with his own parents. And I could be reading too far into that. And this could be my therapist background coming out. But I don't think Matt including these details was just haphazard. Even though a lot of things are chaotic and random, I'm not sure that this piece of his character development is. Before we dive into the final scene, I don't know if I highlighted it enough, but I love Prepotente and Miriam. I think their dynamic is hilarious. I think Prepotente on his own is just so funny with the random goat screams and his sophisticated way of talking that's constantly interrupted by the random goat screams and his affection for Donut. I am just so excited to see them in future books, but also low-key, their party is absolutely terrifying. And the fact that he was just like casually taking on this boss and like just so powerful, I'm really excited. I think he's going to be a really fun addition to the series moving forward. The final scene, my goodness, so much happened. I know you don't need me to recount the entire thing. This isn't a retelling, but my goodness, just Carl in those moments where everything kind of locks and Maestro is summoned into Grohl's body and then there's a mimic and you're just like, I don't see how Carl is going to get out of this. And if anyone comes to help him, I don't see how they're also getting out of this. And wow, what a scene. That was so well written. And it was like the perfect ending. Like I know like Matt talks about this a lot, like how he likes to write himself into a corner and there's like no other possible way that this could have went. And like, I truly felt like that reading this scene, like there is no other way that this scene could have went. Like, I don't know how else they could have gotten out of it besides the way that they did. Obviously with most things in the dungeon, nothing went to plan. They were going to teleport Grohl and like they were just gonna, it was all supposed to work out and nothing did. Carl ends up in this horrible position, but we see how everyone worked together to save him. Especially Katya was like kind of the mastermind behind it and developed this whole plan on the fly. And we also see how not only is Carl becoming more capable and Donut's becoming more capable, but she's becoming more capable and she cares about them. And Carl said one quote in this, like in these final like scene, whatever, and it stuck with me. Let me go to my notes. He said, all my life, I'd felt alone. And now at the edge of the apocalypse, I finally realized how much I needed other people. Wow. Oh my gosh. Also, Maestro is such a loser. Like, he's such a loser. Oh my gosh. The ending, like scene with him just like stopping around. It's like, I just sat there and I was just like reading this and I'm just like, you are such a loser. My goodness. I do think that Carl egging him on a Dutch show, don't know if that's the best idea, but nonetheless, this is the section where I'm going to give you a firm heads up. I'm going to be using very colorful language. If you have kids in the room, you don't want them listening to this next 10-15 seconds, so speed forward. My new vocal stim is glurp glurp motherfucker, and I just don't know if I don't know. That might be the best line in this entire book. Absolutely epic. By far my favorite thing that happened. I mean, they defeat or teleport Grohl, and then Carl just has that classic line and has been running on repeat in my brain. All right, you should be safe to listen now. I said I was going to start doing a new segment with my favorite NPC of the week, and this week is Gary. It's Gary. Poor guy. He saved so many crawlers, and obviously he was wasted for most of these scenes. But when Carl started chopping off his hands continually, he would get resurrected and would be sober for the entire thing. And he was so terrified. But once he realized he was actually helping people, he was just so incredibly brave. So hats off to you, good sir. May you be able to imbibe until your days in the dungeon are over. And he was not the only NPC that absolutely just broke my heart. Also, like Tisquick with his daughter and Firebrandy realizing she keeps having these babies, and even though they bring her back every dungeon, and they never let her keep her children, and they are real and they have names to her. And gosh, like the NPCs break my heart just as much, if not more, than the main crawlers in this story. And it's heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching. And you're just realizing quickly, like, I don't think Carl's savior complex is just going to be limited to the crawlers. Like, he is going to burn this all to the ground, and he's going to try to save everybody. And then he also does make a note, though, that sometimes the thing you can do to save them is actually truly eliminating them. And he kind of gets mad at the people in the dungeon Anarchist Cookbook. Like, you guys haven't figured it out yet. Like, it's just not just about the crawlers, you know? We also have some honorable mentions that don't quite fit in any other segment of this episode. First things first, the Beanie Babies, the lore. Oh my gosh. They're basically these summoning grenades that summon these really amazing, some powerful, some not so powerful, just creatures. And the thing we learn is a true summoning. And you have to pull the tag off and throw it. And it's just so epic. And I'm so happy that these are becoming a more integral part of the story. And we also learned that Carl has a super, super, super strong Beanie Baby type thing in his inventory. Super cool. I do think the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook deserves an honorable mention in of itself. It is one of the coolest additions so far to the story. I love having context from previous crawlers. It helps us get kind of this natural insight to previous dungeons other than just like Mordecai or Odette telling us about it. And we just see how other creatures and other crawlers have survived before him and the things that they've learned. And then also the way that Carl kind of organically tries to discover these things in the dungeon and how he does that to make it look like he doesn't have this insider knowledge. There was one scene, I didn't really know how to put it in here, but where the AI decides that they're no longer, was it the AI? It might have been Borit that decided that crawlers were no longer able to hold liquid without a container in their inventory. And they issued a patch, and all of a sudden Katya just starts erupting with liquid, like gore everywhere. And then I also thought it was funny that it was right after they took showers that this happened, by the way. And Mordecai comes back, obviously, and like is, you know, they get the cleaning bot. Awesome. That was pretty cool. And kind of very like Smart House-esque if you're like a Disney fan from the 90s. Anyway, I digress. I think that's one of my favorite part, though, about this story is the juxtaposition of like the chaos out in the dungeon. And then they have like this like beautiful little domestic life in their private space where they can like process and train and, you know, take showers. And then there's just like this chaos where she's erupting with gore everywhere. And it's just like the whiplash of the story that just makes it so fun, but also keeps me on my toes and keeps me entertained. I think that might say something about me as a person that I enjoy just being in constant chaos, maybe, but I am just here for it. And I absolutely just think the story is both horrifying at times, but also hilarious. I do think I also want to mention Katya's fan box being an upgrade to her rush ability was such a troll move, but my goodness, I'm just so excited to see her like getting upgraded and becoming so strong, not only as a character, but like the things that she's willing to do, becoming more confident in herself. I just am so excited to see it. And I think that skill is going to make her become a pretty strong contender in the dungeon. Some looming questions or comments to close out this episode. Maestro is not dead. Obviously, he is here and he has it out for Carl. How is this going to play out in the lower levels? We know that he is not happy, and I can't even imagine after this entire interaction with Carl and him being inside Carl's body, how that's going to go for Carl. I can't even imagine. But we also know his sister is not on his side. She gave Katya that arrow, that the God-killing arrow, and we know that she knew her brother was going to be coming back as Gruul and that he has every intent on paying back Carl. So why is she on Carl's side? I wonder. Another thing, I think there's going to be some strong implications for making their chats public. And I'm kind of nervous to see how this plays out, but I could be wrong. And then lastly, why was Odette sponsoring Hecla? Like, I feel like there needed to be good reason for that. Also, she wouldn't admit that on her show. She told them after the fact. She said it was her husband sponsoring her. So why doesn't, one, she want people to know she was sponsoring Hecla? Why does she want everyone to think it's her husband? And then two, why was she honest then with Carl? And like, there just is more there. And I know we will hopefully get answers, hopefully in the next book. But anyway, those are some looming questions I have out there moving into book 4. Lastly, starting in June, I'm going to be crawling a little bit slower as we move through the dungeon. This is for a couple of reasons. One, I want to give you guys more DCC content. People have said they want me to break these books up a little bit more, especially as we move forward. The books are going to get more complicated, more involved. So this will allow me to give you more content. But then too, it also gives me the chance to cover some other things as well. Some other books, maybe some author interviews. So the options are kind of endless, but I wanted to give you the update moving forward. Next week, I'm going to be giving you my initial thoughts on The Gate of the Feral Gods by Matt Dinniman, which is book 4 in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. If you've made it this far, drop a train emoji down in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to get alerted when there's new episodes. Thank you so much for crawling with me today. Bye-bye.